Alright, this is my second take on making this video. First one was long as crap, so we'll try to shorten this one up. So, when you're troubleshooting fiber, you're looking for indicators first, right? If you're working with 62.5, which is generally an orange fiber, beige coupler, beige connector. These are SCs. These are LCs here. If you're working with STs, usually you don't really see STs unless you're dealing with like security and stuff like that. Security still loves to use these STs and 62.5. Doing security systems, on cameras, stuff like that. Generally, if you're doing like single mode, you're looking for blue, a blue boot or a blue coupler, right? Anaerobic connectors, these are LCs, they're all blue. That's for single mode. So there's your first indicators. Here's a 50 micron single mode, or a 50 micron multi-mode LC connector. The important thing is, I wanted to get stressed to you guys, is the fact that when you're shooting fiber, the first thing you need to do, or when you're troubleshooting fiber, the first thing you need to do is use a VFL. These things are like 36 bucks. Buy a VFL online, on Amazon, have it shipped to your house. I promise you, this will make your day go a lot better. When I leave the house, especially when I was a tech, if I were to go do a 24 strand, I can do a 24 strand. I'd get there at 6 o'clock in the morning, probably get started at 7 because I'm walking around with the client, figuring out where it's going to go. I terminate it, test it. I'm usually out of there by 11 o'clock, right? I only need one helper. Help me run it. Then I can put on anaerobics, whether it's no matter the flavor, SC, LC, ST, doesn't matter. But when you run into a problem, going to an OTDR is time consuming. You need a VFL. So one of the things I've been dealing with Honcho, one of my guys that worked with me, he's a good technician. And I wanted to show him this, and this is the whole reason why I'm doing this video, is for you, Honcho. But when you shoot this fiber, right, and the fiber comes out the end, and the whole end is glowing like that, right? There's a couple different reasons for that. Either the end's dirty, right? You need to clean it off with alcohol and a chem wipe. Or it might be scratched, which you can see with your scope. Or the ferrule is broke. And these ferrules will break. This is an ST. They're famous for breaking. I hate using them because they're a pain in the butt, getting them in and out, especially if you're putting on anaerobics. Because most times when you put on anaerobics, or if I go behind somebody, they don't clean the ferrule off with alcohol. So what happens is they get glued in the daggone couplers. So when you get done putting on anaerobic connectors, take your chem wipe or your whatever your lint-free wipe is, and you wipe the whole ferrule off with alcohol. You wipe the end off, and you get a good dry wipe, and you just one straight. You don't have to sit there and scrub it. You're not scrubbing dishes. You just one wipe, done. So if you're still got light coming from it, then you know that the connector is bad. Especially if you can look in a scope, and if it's broke and it's still glowing like that, is a bad connector. So it will even give you, if you're shooting with the fluke, it will even give you sometimes they'll give you a decent reference, right? But it'll be because the light will go through it one way, and when it when you actually do a bidirectional test on a tester or on an actual line or whatever, and you start getting problems, you're like, I got a good reference, and you check light on the actual port that you're dealing with, and you start getting good light, and you're like, well, let me last resort, let me check this connector on the test leads because it will be broken. Sometimes I've gotten them broken out of the pack. I've literally got them torn right out of the pack. Big pet peeve of mine, if you are going to test fiber out of the flute and you do not clean your patch cords, even if, I don't care if you got them brand new out of the pack, and you don't check these jokers and clean them, and you plug them right into the output fiber of your flute test lead or test head, you're destroying it. These things are always dirty. And for the love of God, when you go to put the cap back on this joker, don't push it all the way down, because you're going to pick up dirt, right? And when you put this and plug this into the next port, guess what you're going to do? You're going to put dirt in that mated pair, right? And dirt over time will scratch the glass, okay? So make sure that you clean these things before you put them into test heads, always. If you're jumping from port to port, you know what I mean? If you're testing 24, 48, 144, 864, no matter what it is, you can go a couple before you start to see the deterioration of your tests, and you can usually tell that by your dB loss. As your dB loss constantly creep up. It's because you get dirty test leads. If you are walking between, say you're testing so many strands, and you're walking between places that you're testing, LIUs, whatever, wall mounts or whatever, and you get to the next place, listen, every time you mate these, it causes static electricity. Especially if you use one clicks, and you start one click in the ports, one click in the ends of these, you're adding static electricity to them. I know Flute doesn't like to say it because they want you to buy their product. For the love of God, put a little alcohol in there and put a little chem wipe and wipe the daggone thing off, because you build up electricity on it, right? Or static, I should say. And static will pick up particles as you're walking from place to place, especially if you don't have a test lead, your caps on. a VFL is your one stop. That's the first thing you do if you have issues, right? If you're testing, say you're testing all day, and you're bidirectional testing, and you go to the next test, right? And you plug your stuff in, and you're not getting the link. And you're the one running the head in. You tell your guy, hey, hold fast right there. You switch your polarity. I always start, whenever I'm testing fiber, I always lead with my output fiber, because I want to shoot out to them and come back. Now that requires you to go in your test settings and make sure that your test settings is showing just that you're shooting out that way. That's important, because when you go back to troubleshoot later and you've saved your fails, like Fluke tells you to do, you save your fails, so it saves you on troubleshooting time. You go back and you check your fail, you'll know port 84, first port of 84. If you're using duplex, a lot of times they'll like you to save like that. Or first, instead of doing like a, port 1 and 2, it'll be like port 1 and 2, but it'll be, I should say, if you're doing like this on a 12 strand and this is the 11th and 12th strand, it'll actually be, a lot of times they'll like you to say this is port 6, because it's their guys are, this is one connector to them, even though it's 2 to us. So it'd be like port 6, 1 and 2, right? So if you are double checking and make sure that you always run your test system, and you run yours output fiber or input fiber first, make sure that your tester is set up for that. That way, it's easy for you to go back and know exactly what port is wrong and busted, and you have to troubleshoot. Most times it's just dirty, especially on pre-terminated stuff. However, we still use a lot of anaerobic connectors. That brings me to the next thing. Your single mode couplers and your single mode connectors have less tolerance. So the core size of this is 8 to 10, which they say 9 micron. Your core size of this is 62.5 microns. Your core size of a connector, a boot that has a aqua shade to it, is 50 micron. The glass is always 125 microns. These have less tolerance. You can use these in a pinch on multi-mode fiber. It will actually give you better results. It will be a pain in the butt because it's harder to get your glass 125 microns through this connector as opposed to a 50 micron, or that's 50 micron too. I thought I had another 62.5. But there's a reason why the Fluke testers, the test heads itself, the modules on top of them, have dark blue coming out of them. It's because they use single mode. It's actually in their Bixby book. The Bixby book says that a single mode coupler is better for referencing because it has a tighter tolerance. So if you're referencing, you don't need, in single mode, you're doing multi-mode, you don't need multi-mode couplers. You can use a single mode. In fact, it's better. Trust me. Tighter tolerance. Now, the next thing to look for, if you're having problems, right, and you check your connector, and it's not glowing like this one. Let's get one that's not glowing. Let's see if I can find one that doesn't protrude light this bad. Let's see here. Perfect example. If you can't really see that, you see how it's kind of glowing? Let's get a chem wipe out. Let's see if I can't clean that one up. Now, if this one was used prior to, it might be scored up. All right, perfect. Can you still see that same light out of there? The answer is no, right? But I can take this and shine it just like that, and you'll see it. That's because the connector is clean, and it's a good connector. You can't see no light coming from the ferrule, right? It doesn't glow like Rudolph's nose. It's not bleeding through. But if you look down, if you put something up on it, right, you can see it comes straight from the end. That means there's no dirt, there's no scratches, and it's also not broke in the ferrule. I've pulled these things out of the packages before, and they've been broke up in the ferrule. I've even gotten, again, good references. And then when I go to test, I go find out that this is actually one of my problems. It's broken up into connector, and that's and a lot of times I'll see that on a bidirectional. So a lot of times when you're doing single mode, you don't technically have to do bidirectional. A lot of customers like it. Multi-mode, you got to do bidirectional testing. I believe that's a Bixby standard. So keep that in mind. It's always on a Friday when you go to test and you run into this where this is broken, test lead or whatever. There's not much you can do. I mean, you might be able to splice this, but you're going to see that splice when your test leads, when you're trying to, so your tester's going to kind of reject it a little bit. But again, when you're troubleshooting your fiber, you're walking up to something, always look what color fiber you're dealing with. The jacket will tell you everything. This is OM1, OM2. This is OS1, OS2, depending on, whatever the flavor is. This is 62.5 micron. The Aqua stuff will be 50 micron. That's OM3, OM4. But those are things, those are key things that you're looking for when you're trying to troubleshoot. And making sure that that you're tracing the right cable, right? Because if I go, say I'm having issues shooting some glass, and I noticed that the couplers, where did I have a coupler around here? I had a coupler that's, here it is. I have, say I'm shooting multi-mode or single mode fiber, and it doesn't have a coupler that's colored dark blue. And it's got a black coupler or a beige coupler. Well, that's for 62.5 micron. It doesn't take much signal. It doesn't take much light to send signal to whatever device they want to use these for. A lot of times, if you see in this stuff, they need gross light. They don't. It's just, all it is just a pulsation light. It's not like they need high, like fast, you know what I mean, stuff that's going to be more substantial. This stuff is single mode. You got a 9 micron core. This stuff right here, you can have some slop, 62.5. Talking a hole like that compared to a hole like that. So keep that in mind. This stuff, heck, you can have a bad connector that covers a third of it, and you're still going to get light transfer and your signal transfer through something like this. This is not going to be like that. You got 9 microns, right? For my guys, if you're going in the field to troubleshoot fiber, always keep single mode connector, anaerobic connectors in your kit. All this glass is 125 microns, no matter the flavor. The core size is not the outer diameter of the glass. Outer diameter is 125 microns. This is going to be 125. This is going to be 125, and 50 microns is going to be 125. You can use 125 a multi-mode fiber on this connector, and it's going to give you better results for a multi-mode fiber because this has tighter tolerance. However, when you're pumping your connectors full of glue and you're putting it on multi-mode fiber, do yourself a favor and stick those suckers right away because it is hard to get a wider the tolerance on the 125 microns for those multi-modes are just a little bit different. So get those stuck right away, and then you can use those, and I promise you, you'll get better results. A lot of times the customers don't like to see a variation of colors here because they might have beige in the back or black in the back, but the reality is this is going to give you a better result. Especially if you're trying, say your loss budget's kind of low, and you're trying to get, sometimes they'll want to shoot like a 1625 wavelength or something ridiculous. And you got to put an anaerobic on. And you got to be real careful because you can't put those straight on glass. You have to put your diamond paper on top of some mill sheets, which is the clear sheets that they give you when those. You get like 5 mill sheets for one sheet of diamond paper, and you got to be real ginger with that to get that thing polished out so you don't get high reflectance loss. Because it's that higher wavelength, as soon as it hits that glass, it's like shining a bright flashlight into a car window. Most of it's coming back at you. You're trying to get it penetrated through there, so you got to make sure that that actual connector, right, has a good bevel to it. It's not an angle polish connector, but UPC is. It's still got a little bit of a bevel, so the actual connector tip will actually touch perfectly and allow that light to transfer. So, and a lot of times that's why you have to do splice on connectors, but you can do anaerobics. You just got to be light-handed. Again, make sure that when you're testing your fiber, if you're plugging your stuff up to your tester, don't plug it up without checking it and cleaning it, man. I don't care. Again, I don't care if you pull it straight out of the bag. This has never been opened. But I bet you if I put my scope on it, it's going to have dirt on it. And from mating pairs and everything else, these things cause a static electricity. So when you walk across anywhere with static electricity, it's grabbing particles out of the air and sticking them to your connector tip. So every time you mate these, if you made them a bunch, you need to just take a little rubbing alcohol, 99%, put a chem wipe on it, wipe it down, make sure it's dry, and then keep going on, especially before you plug your stuff up to your test equipment, because once you get it down inside the output fiber, or of your output fiber on the test head, if you get that dirtied up, it's not, you're going to fight that. And they tell you not to take off that output fiber, that little ring, because I've seen people take them off and break. If you take off that output fiber, it's got a ferrule that looks like this, that the actual SC shroud fits over, right? The little coupler, and it's blue inside of there because it's single mode, and they want to make it perfect. And that's why you use single mode. So if you dirty those interface up, they tell you to use a one click, but the problem is one click, after so long, you're adding static to what you're doing. You need to destatic it. Unfortunately, the best way to do that is stay clean all the time. Don't plug just because you get a brand new test lead doesn't mean they're clean. I've gotten test leads. One time I was doing a job, and we were cutting these and using these as pigtails, and we got them from Canada, and literally every 3 patch cords that we had was broken, and we had to redo a bunch of the work because the test leads, the actual patch cords were broken. We learned that, and we started testing the patch cords and finding out, like, yeah, they're broken. And there's not much we can do. It's not, you're in the field, you're just trying to get your job done, because at the end of the day, you want to go home. You're not trying to be there and fart around all day one day. So anyway, keep single mode connectors in your bag. keep single mode couplers in your bag for reference purposes and for testing purposes. It's better to use single mode than it is multi-mode because of tolerance. That's in your Bixby book. VFL is a absolute must. And never rule out the fact that if you break your ferrule down in there, you're going to see it glow from inside the connector. If all that doesn't work, make sure you try a different coupler, because sometimes those little ceramic, if you were to look straight down in there, you'll see a little light coming through. There's a little piece of plastic, ceramic, whatever it's made of, cone or a barrel that goes down in there that both of these ferrules fit into and perfectly mate themselves. Sometimes they get cattywampus. Sometimes you lose them altogether. Sometimes you go pulling these out, and if you didn't clean the old glue off of there when you was doing your anaerobic connectors, it will glue itself to the inner barrels that go inside of here, and it'll pull it out with them. And then you're finding another coupler. Always keep extra. Always keep. I've told you guys before. Keep several couplers in your bag, because if one goes bad, you don't want to have to be fighting to get your job done on a Friday afternoon or at the end of a day, and you want to be done. Again, I can do a 24 strand. I've done it. Run a 24 strand 200 feet through a building, get my test, terminate anaerobics, no matter the connector type, SC, ST, LC, and been done by 11 o'clock, and I expect paid for my 8 hours. If I leave my house, I'm getting paid 8 hours, period. And I wouldn't expect my guys, if they go out and do a job and their expertise says that they can do the job in by noon, hey man, I'll pay you the whole day. That's not right if I don't, because unless I have somewhere else for you to go. If I got somewhere else for you to go and you're jumping from job, task to task, that's another story. But if I send you somewheres, if you get sent somewheres and because you are good at what you do and you can knock it out in half in 2/3 of the time, you deserve your 8 hours. So anyway, if you have any questions, please hit me up in the comment section. If you don't work with me, if you do work with me, shoot me a text message, hit me up, whatever. I can walk through. I can make you another video if you want to learn how to do anaerobics. You want to do any kind of like troubleshooting on cassettes, NPOs, whatever it may be. So thanks for watching. Like and subscribe.